In this next series of demonstrations, we're going to take this complexity idea as far as we can go with it. Well, actually, we could go much, much farther than we're going to go tonight, but just get the idea. We're going to go pretty far, and I'm going to take you through a series of goals that we're going to go through to get to an end product. Now let's take a quick look at the end product, and then we're going to look at videos of each of the goals. I'm going to go ahead and bring this final up. And so we are going to make this thing that is kind of pointless, but you can get an idea of just what we can do with this. If you'll look at that circle thing that's going around, well, first we've got some 3D going on there. We've got animation nested inside. We've actually got the blue thing is turning and the back wheel is turning at a little bit higher rate. So I've got quite a bit going on here. So to get a better idea of what's going on, let's go through and look at all these goals. We're going to start off with goal 1, and that will be to take our existing art and simply make this spiky thing with a bouncing ball going back and forth across it. Okay, spiky thing with bouncing ball. That is goal 1. Let's look at goal 2. In goal 2, go full screen with this, we will take that spiky thing with the bouncing ball in it and make it rotate. Again, we're going to be doing this through some nesting. Now already, if you look at this and think about trying to animate this with individual symbol instances on the main timeline, it'd be next to impossible. I mean, to get the spiky circle to rotate, that'd be easy, but look at the path that ball is taking. I can't imagine a tween that would be following that very easily that you could do on one timeline. It's taking that back and forth motion and rotating it so that it's actually inscribing these different arcs through the, I was going to say through the air, but across the screen. Okay, so let's go and see what our next step will be. Goal 3 is going to make the background for our spiky circle. And that's just this thing I'm calling my wagon wheel. I don't know, you could think of that as a sunburst or something like that. I'm thinking of it as a kind of a modernistic wagon wheel. Then we will take those two symbols and combine them so that we get the spiky circle with the bouncing ball on the wagon wheel. Now you can see some kind of interesting things going on here. One is if you look at this area here, you can see that the points of the spiky ball are going faster than the spokes of the wagon wheel. So you're getting this kind of weird stroboscopic effect almost. You can also see that we've got a drop shadow going on, which is helping to distinguish this spiky circle. And we've still got the bouncing ball bouncing merrily through the center. Okay, the next step after this will be goal 5, and that's going to be to get some 3D in here. What we're going to do is take 4 instances of that symbol and place them in 3D space that's along the Z-axis so that they recede back into the background. And you can also say, hey, look at this. This one looks a little brighter than the ones that are going back. So we're getting some depth from that through a brightness command. You can also see a bit of a drop shadow there that's also helping to separate these things in space. This drop shadow, of course, it's much more diffuse than the one on the spiky circle because really these things would be further apart. We know it could be even more diffuse than that, but things get hard to see. And then finally, we're going to take this symbol instance. This is all still in one symbol, and we're going to make that one we saw at the very beginning and make that spinning thing with the wheels follow the perimeter of our stage. Now, this movie is actually all on one frame on the main timeline, and this is going to help you a bit with seeing how to structure something like your next assignment that you're going to be doing, which is going to be to make a single frame movie where all your animation, all your movement and stuff is contained within symbols rather than being just plunked right down on the main timeline. So let's get started with this. I have created a starter file. Let's go over to Flash here. And this starter file simply contains 3 art symbols. I'm just going to drag these out to the stage. I should mention my stage is a little wider here. I've made it 700 wide by 400 tall just to give us some more room for the 3D stuff. So we have the first one called Circle Fill Art. That's nothing but a black circle. Then we have Spiky Circle. I made this by combining a circle with a fill and a star that I made with the Polystar tool. I just made those as merge shapes and overlaid them and then put a stroke around the outside. And finally we have the spoked wheel, which was also done with merge shapes, but this time I used radiating lines from the center and used those to cut out parts to fill with a different color. Okay, so we're going to start with these 3 symbols. So let's go for goal 1 here. I do want to delete everything from the stage to start off with. And remember, goal 1, if we take a quick look at it again, goal 1 is to simply create spiky circle with ball bouncing back and forth on it. Okay, so if we think about this goal, we think, well, all of this action for the ball, at least, is contained within the spiky circle. So we don't necessarily want to do this on our main timeline. Instead, this would be a good one to use insert new symbol because our bounds of the balls bouncing are going to be determined by the bounds of the spiky circle. So let's insert a new symbol. And we will call this one, let's call this Spiky Circle with Bouncer. Now, my words and names here that I use are just kind of my idiosyncrasies. You may want to call them B3 or something like that. I wouldn't. I like something that will remind me of what I'm doing, but that's all up to you. Okay, so we have Spiky Circle art. So let's bring that out and we will align it on our timeline. Going to align it so that its upper left hand corner is at the registration point of our symbol. Let's go ahead and give this layer a name. I'm just going to call it Spiky Circle. Even though I can't really read it on this small screen, we're just going to do that. Okay, next thing we want to do is create our bouncer. Now we can go about this in a couple of different ways. I could animate the bouncer right here on this timeline, but I don't really like that. I actually want to nest that animation inside of another symbol because, hey, I might want to use it again. So let's go ahead and make a new layer. And what we're going to do is create this one in a different way. Instead of using insert new symbol, we're going to put an instance on the stage where we want it to be, and then we're going to edit in context so that we can see where we want it to animate to. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this one Bouncer. And I want to put my ball exactly at the center of these points. So I can look at the size of this and see that, hey, this is width and height 200. I was careful to use my shift key to constrain this when I made it so that my points would be evenly across the horizontal. So I can actually come down here and drag a guide down here and put it at half the height. So we're just going to double click that and put it at 100 pixels. And that's going to help me to position this ball. Now side to side, I don't really know what because that's going to depend on where it looks like it's touching these, but at least for the horizontal, we've got it made. Okay, let's bring down instance of Circle Fill Art. I'm going to go ahead and lock Spiky Circle so I don't do anything bad to it. Let's go bring an instance of Circle Fill Art out here. We will zoom in here, and if I pick this thing up by the center, then it's going to snap to my guides. I do have snapping turned on to snap to guides. That's important or else I won't do it. Okay, so I'm going to start out by positioning it so it looks right about On the side here, it looks like I could probably move it over just a couple of pixels. Okay, how about right there? Now, remember, I don't want to create my my tweens and stuff here on the timeline of Spiky Circle with Bouncer. Typically, when I'm making a movie like this, I usually do each tween inside its own symbol. Like if I want this ball to bounce, I'm going to tween it on its own timeline and then put that ball bouncing inside of another symbol. This is just a way of atomizing your structure, of simplifying it so you don't have one timeline that's got a gazillion different animations on it. And this allows you to make things that are much more portable, much more reusable, and totally flexible. Again, this isn't going to be the thing you want to do all the time. If you are doing like a narrative movie or a cartoon or something, then you would be putting most of it on the same timeline. But we're not doing that here. What we're doing is we're making little units of animation that we will then combine in like an animated infographic or something like that, which you'll see, which is coming up in one of your assignments. Okay, so here's our bouncer. We have an instance of circle fill 20 art. So we are going to wrap this in a circle by converting it to a symbol. And we can call this lots of things. I'm going to call it Bouncer. Movie clip is a fine thing for it to be. We're going to use lots of movie clips tonight. Okay, so I'm no longer looking at circle fill art, circle fill 20 art. It looks like I am because what I'm really looking at is an instance of Bouncer. And if I double click this, you'll see, okay, there we're inside Bouncer, and now there's my circle fill 20 art. This is a symbol, so I can tween it here. Let us go ahead and zoom out again. And we're not going to zoom out all the way. We're just going to zoom out so that we can see the entire spiky ball here. And we're going to animate this thing to go back and forth. Remember, we're on the timeline of Bouncer. I'm going to guess at about 18 frames for that. That'll be about 3/4 of a circle, or 3/4 of a second. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and go for a full second. While I was talking slowly there, I was actually looking at my notes, and it looks like I actually did it for a second here. So I'm going to do the same thing that we did before with that bouncing ball, is we're going to put some keyframes out. This is going to be the keyframe where eventually it's going to be on the other side. We're not going to move it just yet, though. So we're going to hit F6 to put a keyframe there. We're going to come down here to frame 48 and hit F6 again. I have 3 keyframes. That circle is at the same position on each of them. So now we can come to the middle keyframe. I'm just going to hold down my Shift key and slide this across. It's staying in line, and we're going to get it close and then zoom in and nudge. Zoom and nudge. I'm going to shift down and get a little further. And we'll get it just right in the right place. It's not quite in the right place, but that's probably due to my artwork not being perfect rather than, or maybe this isn't perfectly on center. Close enough. This thing moves back and forth enough that nobody's going to notice. Okay, we can zoom back out. As you animate for a while, you're going to find that you learn what people will notice and what people won't notice. And especially you will notice because you're going to be much more attuned to it than your viewer. You won't be attuned to it more to it than your teacher probably, but you will be more attuned to it, so you might see mistakes and stuff that your viewer never will. Remember that motion really covers up just a multitude of sins. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our classic tweens here. And we've just created this symbol called Bouncer that moves back and forth. And it was important that we do this in context of our symbol spiky ball, or spiky circle, so that we know exactly where we wanted it to bounce to. Okay, so it's going just back and forth, back and forth. Let's go back out to the main timeline, which we can do in a couple ways. We can just start double-clicking on empty area, or we can just come up here and click the breadcrumbs. I'm going to go ahead and show the full screen. I don't need these anymore. And let's go ahead and pull out an instance of Spiky Circle with Bouncer, test our movie, and you will see that we have just achieved, what is it, goal 1. We've just finished goal 1. I'm going to end this movie here, and we're going to start up with goal 2 in the next movie.